So have you ever noticed, like, when, like, someone really, I mean, if there's a new significant relationship in your life that person is going to change your life? Anytime someone really enters our life, changes is going to happen. I remember when Amber and I got married, like, things changed. Now, most of the changes, like when we started living together after the marriage, was, pretty insignificant stuff. There was three major things, and I'm going to go over all those real quickly. The first one was peanut butter. You can see the peanut butter up on the screen. So this is the type of peanut butter that I've been eating since 1983. It's Skippy Honey Roasted Super Chunk Peanut Butter. This is the peanut butter, if you eat peanut butter, that you should be eating, because this is the best peanut butter that's out there. Now, came home one day, and there was like this thing called Jif Creamy Peanut Butter. I'm like, all right, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. Now, that's not even the major issue. The major issue is like when I grew up, like, we stored the peanut butter in the pantry, like room temperature, and so I wake up at like 6:15 the next morning, and this Jif peanut butter is in the refrigerator. So this imitation peanut butter is like 33 degrees, and I am just like totally obliterating bread at this point. Like, it does not spread, and like, I just make a big peanut butter ball. I put some jelly in there and some bread around it, and I got this new invention, and once was more than enough. So that day, I didn't wait till the next day. That day at Kroger, like in the South, like Kroger is like what Hy-Vee is here. So I went to Kroger and I bought 6 of those things. Those and 4 more, and this is so funny. Someone gave us a safe for our anniversary, or for our wedding. We didn't have any money at the time, so there's nothing that we need to put in the safe. So I put these 6 things of peanut butter in the safe, room temperature, baby, and these things were safe, and the order was restored. Okay, so then, like a couple days later, toilet paper was the next issue. So when I went grocery shopping, like, there's only 6 things on my grocery list. Like, that's all you need. Like, there's milk, you got chocolate syrup, you got peanut butter, you got Kraft macaroni and cheese, you got bread, and you got vanilla ice cream. Like, you don't need anything else on your list. So like, before I go to the store, Amber says, "Can you get some toilet paper?" I'm thinking, this is really weird. Like, I bought toilet paper like 3 months ago. Why would we need more toilet paper? So I acquiesced, gave in, patient, kind, all that sort of stuff, and bought the toilet paper. And I'm not kidding you, like 2 days later, she said, like, "Can you buy some more toilet paper?" And you know what I said? I said, "What?" And she said, "Can you buy some more toilet paper?" And like, I'm thinking to myself, like, what is she doing? Like, is she the person that's throwing these rolls at these houses? Like, one of those people? Or is, like, she putting 33-degree peanut butter in it and eating it somehow? I mean, is there something I need to know about here? It's like, all of a sudden, like, I'm buying a membership to Sam's and buying, like, 68 rolls of toilet paper at one time. And, like, toilet paper is now a line item in our family budget. And, like, this is totally new. It changes me. And the last one was a big one. This is just huge. How to make a bed. So like, we got to think. Here's how you make a bed. You got the nice side on the bottom, and then you got the top sheet. So what you do when you make the top sheet is you put the nice side, the good-looking side, the soft side, on the bottom. So you're like a sandwich, kind of like peanut butter and jelly. And then when you flip it over, it looks really pretty. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the soft sheet, and it looks really cool. And like, this is how my mom taught me to do it. This is how my grandma taught her to do it. It's how great-grandma taught grandma to do it. And it's how Jesus taught great-grandma to do it. Like, this is how God says that you should make a bed. And it's just so self-evident. So then, like, she was kind enough to do the laundry, she made the bed, and she didn't do it right. Like, she did, like, the nice side up top, and then it's like I was sleeping with a 80 grit sandpaper on top of me. I didn't sleep a wink that night. So I lived about 20 minutes from where I worked, and I don't tell her this, but I drove home at lunch, and like, I remade the bed, like the way that God intends for beds to be made. Then I got into the safe, and I made myself a peanut butter sandwich. I drove 20 minutes, and I made it back to work in exactly an hour, and life is good. All right, so there's probably a little bit of embellishment there, but the point is, like, when someone enters your life, things are going to change, okay? Now, today is Palm Sunday, and Jesus entered Jerusalem. Now, the implication is that when Jesus enters Jerusalem, what happens is that he enters our life as well. Jesus enters the holy city, so now all of a sudden he is entering us as well. And what Jesus will do is he can and he will enter our lives. Now here's how it happened. Verse 9. The crowds went ahead of him, and those that followed shouted, Hosanna. So here, like, they're singing out to Jesus. They're saying, save us, rescue us, the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Rescue us, save us, Hosanna in the highest heaven. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred, and they asked, and you've asked this question as well. You've asked this question, who is this man? Who is this? The crowds answered, this is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. Okay, so verse 9, Hosanna means save us. So what we do here is we're asking Jesus to save us from the messiness of the world. We're asking Jesus to save us from other people. We're asking Jesus to save us from our own self-destructive behaviors. Now, who is this man? The question is asked, who is this man? Well, this man is the one who can save you. Now, Jesus himself says, I've come to the world for two reasons. I have come to seek, and I have come to save. Jesus has come to seek us so that he invites himself into our lives. Jesus has come to save us. He has come to save us from the messiness of the world. He has come to save us from others, and he has came to save us from our own poor decisions. Now, just like that couple that moves in together, you're thinking, okay, this is really cool. Jesus is going to enter my life. And I really pray as we leave today that all of us can say something like, today was the day that Jesus entered my life, or today that was the day that Jesus invited himself into my life more deeply. I really pray that we can say that, but you have to know when this happens, things are going to change. Now we're going to look at a couple stories that happened right after this, and we're going to discover that when Jesus enters our life, just like he entered Jerusalem, what we can do is we can welcome Jesus with palm branches, the red carpet treatment. We can say, Jesus, come into my life. I want more of you. I need more of you. But then what's going to happen is the relationship now is going to change, because Jesus is going to purify us. Jesus is going to heal us, and Jesus is going to move mountains in our life, which means that because of him, we're going to be able to do things that we have never, ever done before. Now, we're going to look at the next couple stories. I'm going to continue here in verse 12. Now, here's what happens. Jesus has entered the city. Now, the first thing he does, this is the first thing that he did, is he goes to the temple. And this is a side of Jesus that we only see one time. I'm going to read this, and some of you are going to be surprised here what Jesus does. Now, Jesus goes into the temple, and what happens? He says the Bible says in verse 12, Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. It is written, he said to them, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. So what happens here is Jesus comes in, and he's purifying. Now I want to invite our intern. I've had Leandra on our staff since August. She is a senior at Creighton University. She's going to be going to seminary in the very near future. Leandra's done a ton of stuff behind the scenes. She's done a ton of research for us on Sunday mornings and many other things as well. But I want to welcome Leandra. And Leandra's going to talk to us about how God can turn over some tables in our life and how God can purify us.
Okay, so as Craig was just saying, we have this story here. And I don't think a lot of us like this story in this scripture. It's one of the only stories where we see Jesus get really angry. And I think that makes a lot of us uncomfortable because we're used to Jesus being nice and kind and patient and all these things that we originally picture him as, which he is. But in this story, he gets angry, and I think that makes us uncomfortable because our whole lives we're told, don't get angry, be slow to anger. Anger's bad. You should be patient with people. You should love people. But there's a difference between a lot of times when we get angry and when Jesus gets angry. Because when he gets angry in this story, he has every right to. And we get angry about things like making the bed, which are important, but we might not be as justified as Jesus is when he comes into this temple. And we were talking about this story Wednesday at youth group. Chad talked on it a little bit. And so in our small groups, I'm with the high school girls, and we were asking them, why do you think Jesus got so mad? And one of the girls gave a really good answer that I thought relates, and she was like, well, they made the church like a mall. And that's essentially what happened when Jesus came in after this parade. He went into the temple, I'm assuming to pray, and he finds basically a mall. You know, they're selling doves, they're selling a bunch of other stuff. They've got cashier tables and money changers and all this stuff. And he gets angry, and he has a right to be. And it's a kind of justified or righteous anger that we find in him there. It's not the kind of anger that we usually have. It makes a lot more sense. And I think that originally makes us a little uncomfortable. We don't like to think of him as angry. But I think that there's a lot of things in our world still today and in our life that still make him angry all the time, that still some tables in our world that he'd want to flip over, that he'd want to knock down. And I don't mean necessarily in our churches and our temples. I think if Jesus came into Water's Edge this morning, he wouldn't, become enraged and be like, frog pond table, like, what is this? And flip that over, or, the small groups table. And I know he wouldn't flip over any of our donut tables because those are very good. And I mean mostly tables another place in our life. And I think that's the tables that are in our own personal lives. In 1 Corinthians 3:16, Paul writes, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst?" So I want you to think about this story again with your life as that temple that Jesus is walking into, with your different tables set up in there, as opposed to in the church. And there's a church camp that I work at in the summer. It's called Summer Games, and it's in Grinnell, Iowa. And as staff members, as counselors, before camp starts, we all write out our testimony, which is basically a story of your faith. It's your faith journey. And you write about your life before meeting Jesus and how hard it was. Then you write about meeting him. And then the end is about how great knowing Jesus is and how your life is so much better. So before camp, all the staff members, we have to write ours out. And then we trade with a partner and kind of read through theirs and give them advice and tips on how to make it better. And so I'm doing that before camp one year, and I trade with my partner. And basically, what my testimony said, I became a Christian in 7th grade. So the pre-part was basically just me hanging out, being a middle schooler. I met Jesus at a church camp, and it was great. It was like the parade that Craig read about. It was this great moment. It was happy. It was cheering. And then my testimony ended with the part where you're supposed to tell how great your life has been since meeting Jesus. I just wrote on mine, I became a Christian, and then Jesus ruined my life, and it was horrible. And the partner who was reading mine was like, I'm pretty sure you're doing this wrong. You're going to have to rewrite the whole thing. And I had to have her hear me out on this a little bit because, like I said, like Jesus coming into your life, I'm sure a lot of you experienced it. It's a great and wonderful moment. But the moments that follow are a lot like this scripture. It's a lot like Jesus coming in and flipping all these tables over in your life and kind of ruining what you had already set up. And I think that resonates with a lot of us because the main table for me and for a lot of other people is that table of our pride that he needs to flip over. And I'm not talking about pride like cocky, like I'm better than you kind of pride. I mean a different kind of pride where you think of yourself more than you think of anyone or anything else, and definitely more than God. And where your life revolves around your plans and your feelings and what you want, and everyone else is just kind of there, and you've got this whole thing set up for yourself. And there's a quote about humility that kind of explains that. You might have heard it before, but it says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. So we don't have to think that we aren't as good to be humble, but we have to think about God and think about others as we live our life. And that's the kind of pride that God had to overturn in my life. He had to overturn the plans that I made for myself that weren't his plans for me. He had to change the way I acted around people and who I hung out with because that wasn't who he designed me to hang out with or what he designed me to be doing. And so after this big parade in my life, I had a bunch of tables flipped over in my life as well. And so I want you for a second to just think about your own temple, your own life. If your life was in a church and you had all these different tables set up. So we have our career table, we've got our finances table, we've got a table for our families, our personal lives, hobbies, friends. Some of us have a peanut butter table, like Craig, or whatever your thing is. You've got a table for that. And I want you to imagine and think about if Jesus walked into this temple and saw all your tables. So each of our tables will look different. I want you to think about, there's definitely a bunch of good things in each of our lives that he would probably find, but there's also probably a lot of things that might make him angry. We're all sinful human beings. None of our temples right now are perfect. None of our tables are perfect. There's stuff in each one that he might want to flip over, some of these tables that he might want to get rid of for us. And as I think about it a little bit, I think about, maybe he would come up to our career table and he'd be like, you're being a workaholic, you're spending all your time with work and you're ignoring all these other good things. Maybe he's saying that, like Craig's prayer said, maybe you're not living the Christian life at work in your career. You're not living that way that you're showing on Sunday morning. And maybe he might want to flip that over on our career table. Maybe he comes to our family table and he sees that, we're not giving any time to our family because we have all this other stuff going on, or we're not appreciating our spouses or our children, or, we're being mean to our siblings and kind of being selfish in our family, and he'll want to flip those over. A big one that I know he'd come up to for all of us that we don't want him to come near would be our finances table. We would like to keep that one how we have it set up. And I think that's because whether it's a lot or a little on our finances table, everyone has a little bit of greed on that table. And God talks about money a lot throughout the Bible, and that's important to him. And I know that that's something he'd get angry about. And when I talk about greed on that table, I'm not talking about the greed where, like, I just want to get as much money and stuff as I can and take it from others and keep it for myself. But I'm talking about the greed that all of us suffer from, where we're not satisfied with whatever we have, and we're constantly trying to get more and more and more. And it's that endless chase of there's no amount or no content moment on that table. Or maybe on our personal lives table, some big ones are envy and comparison and all those social things that kind of plague our lives, where we compare ourselves to others and we don't feel worthy, or we're envious, we don't like what we have, we want what they have. And just like greed is, we're not satisfied with the material things we have, I think in our personal lives, this greed and envy and comparison is kind of a lack of approval and love from others. And I think that those are just a few examples, but as you think about your own tables and your own temple and what's on them, maybe you can think of some things that God either is trying to flip over right now, or maybe needs to flip over in your life. And I just want to remind us that in this story, he doesn't go into the temple just to make a huge mess and destroy everything they had set up and then just leave and be like, that's the end of it. He comes in to purify the temple, to make it better. And when God comes into our life and it seems like he's messing up our plans and what we have going on, it's not to ruin our life, like I said earlier. It's to purify our life. It's to make it better. It's to make room for something better that he has designed for us. And so I just invite you, as you think about those tables, when I think about this story, it doesn't say what happens after he walks out of the temple, but I always wonder, if all the people selling doves and the money changers, as Jesus walks out, we're like, would Jesus, that jerk, mess everything up? We got this huge mess, and then they just kind of set up their tables and started selling again. Or if they kind of were like, he has a good point, what are we doing in here? And kind of cleaned up the mess and got out of there. And so I think those are kind of the two reactions we can have. Jesus is going to flip those tables no matter what. So we have to respect that and, let him flip those and let him purify us instead of just setting them back up again. And as Jesus leaves the temple, after this big parade, a bunch of sick and hurting people come to him for healing. And in Matthew 21:14, we see it says, "The blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them."
It's only one verse, but it kind of says a lot. Right after he overturned the tables, it says, "The blind and the lame came to him, and he healed them." The blind and the lame, they were these people that were neglected and rejected by society. They faced insults, and they were often seen as less human. They often weren't allowed to participate or even allowed into the temple because they were seen as unclean, and so they weren't allowed to participate in the spiritual things that happened in the temple. And yet here in the temple that Jesus has just cleaned out, he's now offering healing to the other people who are rejected. You know, a lot of times we face rejection in our lives. We face a lack of approval. And I think that that's a longing that a lot of people have. We have this longing for acceptance and approval. We want people to like us. We want to be accepted. It can make us nervous when we get in front of a group of people because we don't know, do they like me? Am I okay? We go seeking acceptance in all kinds of different ways, through our own success, through our financial successes, through our talents, through our popularity, sometimes through our kids. And when those things don't happen, we can feel rejected. We can feel like we've been tossed aside and that we're unworthy or we're broken. And we can be left feeling lost. I want to take you back about 12 years to a time that I got really lost. I was new in my first job. It was a big church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was hired there, and I was really excited. I had some success working in the organization that I'd been in before. It was a small town, but I thought I'd done a good job, and I was so excited to take everything that I knew and learned and that had been successful before and apply it in a new situation. I really wanted to do great. And so I got there, and I worked really hard to win the approval of kids and parents and the staff at my church. And about 7 months in, I thought I was doing some great stuff. I had planned a great big ski trip to Jackson Hole, Wyoming for spring break. We had a mission trip that was in the works. And I had taken the youth group, the high school ministry, and grown it over those 7 months. I thought that I was doing really well. And so one Monday morning, you can imagine my surprise when I get to work and I walk down to my office and the associate pastor says, "Hey, if you've got a minute, can you come down to the senior pastor's office?" And so I go down there and I walk into the office, and over the course of the next several minutes, I'm told they don't think things are working out with me and I'm going to be let go. I was let go. I was fired. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you haven't been fired from a job, but maybe a relationship has ended, or you've been told in some way, shape, or form that something is over. And so you know maybe what it felt like when I said I walked out of my pastor's office, and my office was on the opposite side of the building, and that hallway seemed so much longer than it had ever been before. I packed up my office, and I went home. And I got home and I realized that for 7 months, I had put everything I had into this job. I had given up my days and my nights and my weekends, and every person that I had met since I had moved to that city was in that church, and I was alone. I had gone to school for this job, and now I was questioning whether or not it was the right thing for me, and everything I had was there. Over the next few weeks, I spent a lot of time trying to figure things out and what had happened. And at the end of the day, there were 3 things that I knew. The first is that my entire life, like the tables in the temples, had just been upended. Everything about everything that I knew was now turned over. I was hurt, is the second thing, and I was in need of healing. And the third was that I couldn't heal on my own. I began to realize that a lot about what I have done was all me. I thought, I can do this, I can do this. And what I really realized was that I needed to have it back in God's control. I was eventually offered a new job in Oklahoma. I packed everything up again and I moved and I started over. But I was determined that things weren't going to be the same way. Here I was in a new place, and something about this church felt different. The church was significantly smaller. The people were different. My focus, though, I think is what it was, had changed. Instead of seeking parents' and kids' approval, what I really was trying to do was just let God show me that He approved of me. In Galatians chapter 1, verse 10, it says, "Am I trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ." And essentially what Paul's telling the people there is, he says, it is not who we are, but whose we are. And I discovered that during that time, when I decided to trust in God's leading, I began to move forward. I began to see new things happen, and I wasn't so much focusing on dwelling on my past as when I had first arrived. When I started working at the new church, they didn't care about the mistakes I made before I came there or why I was let go from my previous job. I was just simply accepted for who I was, and they showed me what God had been trying to show me all along. My story doesn't really just end with a new job and everything's wonderful and happy again, though. When you move or change situations, it doesn't always take away the hurt or the pain that you've felt or the things that have happened. And sometimes when we've had our tables overturned, we have a healing to experience as well. I think when God overturns the tables, what we see in the very next verse of our own lives is how God begins to pick up the pieces. You see, we've all had bad things happen to us. We've had relationships fall apart. We've failed. We've made mistakes. We've compared ourselves to others and of what's going on in our lives to what's going on in theirs and feel that we've come up short. We've looked at our own spiritual lives and we viewed ourselves as stagnant in our faith. And sometimes our past can prevent us from truly moving forward. Often, we need that spiritual healing that God offers. The question that we're faced with is, can we put it behind us? Can we allow God to heal us and begin to grow from it? When I was let go, I had a lot of questions for God. The biggest one was, why did God put me in a place where I had tried so hard and still ended up failing? It caused me to question whether or not I was really cut out for ministry, although it didn't change my desire to do ministry. And at times I was just left questioning, am I really supposed to be doing this? Even after getting a new job, those questions and those doubts, they lingered because they kept coming back whenever I thought about the context of having failed before. Well, 15 months after I was let go, God answered my questions. He answered my prayers, and I began to see that healing. See, I was back in Minneapolis with the new church, with the kids that I was now leading on a mission trip. And we were there, and on one particular day, I remember our work site, as we followed the directions of the work site, we drove not even a block away from the church. I could see the church as we went by. I knew exactly where we were. And I realized God's took me away from this. God overturned those tables so that he could provide this new healing in my life, that he could put me in this place. For a year, I had been carrying around a lot of hurt and a lot of pain from what I went through, and yet right in front of me, as we were going around, there was this group of kids who were having a great time on a mission trip. They were, their parents had allowed me to bring them with me to this trip. Their parents had trusted me with their kids, and I had made some great friends over the years. I felt like I was in the right place and that God was doing something good. And the really biggest reason of all was because what I realized was I had quit trying so hard to do it on my own. And I had started allowing God to heal me. Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 and 14 says, "Brothers and sisters, whatever I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." I realized that God had been with me in my darkest time. Like the blind and the lame, I had sought him out, and God had helped me through a year of discovering acceptance, of experiencing healing, of putting my past behind me, and of finding hope and a new sense of wholeness so that I can move forward. You see, when you're at that place and you realize that healing has happened, that sense of wholeness begins to take over you. When we allow Christ to work in us, we begin to discover that the blind see, the lame walk, the lonely experience community, and the rejected are accepted. Jesus offers us that kind of healing, but it requires putting our faith right back into the same one who turned over the tables. After Jesus healed the blind and the lame, he traveled to Bethany where he spent the night. Here's what happened the next morning. As Jesus was on his way back to the city, he was hungry. Seeing a fig tree by the road, he went up to it, but found nothing on it except leaves. Then he said to it, "May you never bear fruit again." Immediately the tree withered. When the disciples saw this, they were amazed. "How did the fig tree wither so quickly?" they asked. Jesus replied, "Truly I tell you, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only can you do what was done to the fig tree, but also you can say to this mountain, 'Go throw yourselves into the sea,' and it will be done. If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer."
All right, so this is a really cool story. So Jesus is walking, and he sees a fig tree, probably pretty much like this. So the fig tree has leaves. It appears to be healthy, but it's not producing fruit. So Jesus just basically says to the tree, "You're done." and the tree withers. So last night when I was running with Benjamin, he asked me, he says, what are you talking about tomorrow, Daddy? And I said, I'm talking about the time that Jesus killed a fig tree. And he says, well, why did Jesus kill the fig tree? And I said, well, it's not about the figs. It's not about the tree, but it's about the power of God. Because listen in verse 20 what happened. The disciples were amazed. I mean, Jesus took this tree, a tree like this, and it was just done. The disciples were amazed when they saw this and asked, how could the fig tree wither so quickly? Now, Jesus says at the end of this that mountains can be moved. And when he says that mountains can be moved, he says, like, you say to the mountain, go to the sea, and it will do it if you have faith. What this means, it's a metaphor. What this means is that we're going to be able to do things in our life that we have never done before. So Jesus enters our life, he purifies us, he heals us, and then we are open up to the work of God in our life. Now, I'm just going to give you one example. I'm just going to flush this out. I'm going to use the example of envy. Now, as a pastor, I've done ministry for 20 years. I've seen a lot of things. I've seen teenagers. Gosh, I wish I looked like she looked like. I wish I had her boyfriend. I go to nursing homes. His kids come to see him more than my kids come to see me. She is healthier than me and is going to live. It's always this envy. It's always this comparison. And maybe you deal with this, and if you do, I want you to listen. And if you don't really deal with this, praise the Lord for that. But there's still a principle here that I want to talk about. Okay. So envy is like drinking poison and basically expecting the other person to die. You can't fully love someone that you're envious or jealous of. If you want to be miserable in life, I'm going to tell you how to do it. Be envious, be jealous. Envious puts ourselves in this unenviable position of constantly comparing ourselves to other people. It's kind of like this. Okay, so my kid isn't a great soccer player. That kid is amazing. Just because your kid isn't the best player on the team, that does not make you unsuccessful as a parent. Or if your kid doesn't have a 4-point grade average and they're not going to Yale next year, that doesn't make you unsuccessful as a parent. You might compare her boyfriend sends her flowers to the office and I can't even get my husband to pick up his socks from the bedroom floor. There's that comparison, there's that envy that goes on. It might be she and her boyfriend, they went out to dinner and they're at the movies, now they're up late, and I'm at home watching Real Housewives of Atlanta reruns, dipping peanut butter and popcorn together and eating them. That was funny. Yes, and laugh. I'm almost done. Just chill out. So let's say you want to get rid of this. You're tired of it. It's just wearing you down. You're not able to experience the blessings that God has for us. The minute that you're envious of someone is the minute that you're basically focusing on what you don't have rather than what you do have. Now, if this is an issue for you, okay? If you're just tired of this, if you don't want to compare yourself to who other people are today, and you just want to compare yourself to who you were yesterday, I want you to remember that Jesus killed a fig tree. So in verse 21, it says this, Jesus replied, truly I tell you, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only can you do what was done to the fig tree, but you can also say to the mountains, go, throw yourself into the sea, and it will be done. Now listen to verse 22, if you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. Now don't take this out of context, okay? Okay, I believe that I should win the lottery and be worth $17 million. I believe this, Lord, make it happen. That's not the way it works. Let's go back to the issue of envy. I'm just going to I believe this. I believe verse 22. If you believe, you'll receive whatever you ask for in prayer. So here's how this might work for you, okay? If envy is your issue, if greed is whatever your issue is, it's Lord, I'm just tired of being envious. I'm tired of being jealous. I don't like that I feel this way. Help me to be happy, for these people who are blessed. Help me to see your goodness in this blessing. Lord, help me, just empower me. Give me the wisdom to just be grateful for the things that I have. Help me not to focus on what I don't have, but what I do have. And Lord, I just pray that envy will be replaced by just being happy. I pray that envy will be replaced by this thing called love. Now, you can probably pray that prayer a whole lot better than what I just prayed it. But I believe if you keep praying a prayer like that, envy and jealousy will disappear. Yeah, I believe if greed is your issue and you pray that prayer and you just keep praying it, that your greed is going to disappear. Yeah, if fear is your issue and you just keep praying for courage, I believe that courage is going to overcome your fears. So let's go to God and let's pray. Lord.